Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode, season 1 of forgot her name on Noodle podcast.
Beyond Noodle podcast.
Yeah, like in my head, I'm like full stack engine. No, that's something else. In this episode, we're going to start with talking about AI and content creation and how we're integrating it, what we've learned so far, what we're seeing with it, and all that kind of stuff. And one of the reasons to discuss it is online. I shouldn't say all social media. I don't know how other social media is, but on Twitter, depending on what circle you're in, it could be very much like, oh, if you use AI for your content creation, you're just gonna bomb, right? Like you're just gonna completely fail and blah blah blah. And so if you're
Or
not
you're
us-
cheating.
if you're not using so if you're not using AI, that means you're doing everything manually and everything. But
Mhm.
then you have the other side of people who are like, no, AI is a tool. If you use it the right way and everything, you're more productive, you get more done, and that's beneficial
Mhm.
and everything. And so it can be very confusing. And so I think, and we're not experts on this. I think everything's still brand new when it comes to AI and content creation with certain things and what works and what doesn't. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Um, and I know for a lot of people that know us already, there's a big interest in AI content creation and blogging
Mhm.
because we're revving up the blog engines again on our side of things only because of AI. Like, do
Yeah.
you think we would dive back into it heavy if AI was
We couldn't dive back into it heavily because it's so much work you can only do so much as just a human being. I can remember the days of I would grab my laptop and go sit at the Wegmans cafe, and my goal was to get 3 blog posts done in a day. And that was like a monumental effort just to get that done. And I'm not talking about like super in depth. This was like back in the days of doing like a list post for favorite home decor or somethings.
right?
So we would not have done it as heavily because it's impossible to do what we're doing without it.
And when we do blog posts, we always have a minimum 1,000-word thing. Like that's just our standard
Bare minimum.
and everything. And so I wrote a blog post this morning. I was up at 3 a.m. and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna sit down and start doing some stuff. And I was going through our analytics, and I saw a keyword that one of our posts was popped up for, but that keyword was not in that post. And so what you can do is there's 2 options with that. You can either put that keyword throughout that post or say, oh, let me create a new piece of content. I decided to create a new piece of content just because the keyword itself felt like it could be explored more than
What
in the
was it?
blog post. How to become your own boss. And I was like, that'd be a great blog post itself
Yeah.
and everything. And so I did how to become your own boss with no money and everything. And in an hour, I did about 1,800 words, which sounds great because then you're like, oh, then in a day, if you do 6 hours, you can do 12,000 words. No, I'd be fried. Like I'd be absolutely fried. And then I wouldn't want to do post the next day and everything. So it's maybe I could do 1 or 2 posts
Yeah.
a day and
And
everything, which would still be great. But the issue with us would be, at least for me, I would sit there and I go, can I get better returns spending my time doing something else
Mhm.
instead of those 2 hours on a blog post versus something
Right.
else? Um,
And the other thing is writing the blog post is not the end of the blog post. That's just like part A of creating a blog post. There's after it's written, you have images, and then you have your SEO, and then like you can continue adding things onto that too. But just writing it is just one part of the whole process.
and the big thing now in the SEO world, especially with Google, is what is called topical authority. And the only way you can really show topical authority on your site is by having a cluster of content around the topic and everything. And so if we were starting from scratch and going, okay, I'll just say we're going to create a topic cluster around affiliate marketing. Like it would take us a month to
Mhm.
do a decent cluster on affiliate marketing, which is not bad, right? And if this is the way you want to go, that's fine. That's not
Yeah.
bad or anything. but it's more we're looking at our building a business as a holistic thing where blogging is just one small aspect of it. So it's like,
Mhm.
how do we get the blogging? How do we get all the social media that we're doing? And how do we do emails? And instead of just saying, okay, we're just going to blog and wait for content to come in. And that's going to be where we're happy with things. Like, no, that's not how we're doing it.
I, I know this question is going to be asked. What constitutes a cluster? Is there a number that you feel like that's a good cluster?
There's absolutely no number. It's
Yeah.
just what feels comprehensive covering a topic. And it totally
Mhm.
depends on what the topic is. So like the topic of blogging, huge cluster, because blogging is something very general, huge cluster. But if we're like, okay, we don't want to do blogging, we want to be more specific, then it's stay at home mom blogging for people over 30, which was a terrible example, but that would be like a little bit smaller,
Right.
something like that. Or no, a better like if it, you might have a topic you might do plants and you say, okay, I'm gonna do house plants. That's a huge topic cluster. But if you
Mhm.
do pothos varieties, right, that would be a little bit smaller
Mhm.
topic cluster. Like those two topic clusters are not gonna have the same amount. Of posts or anything. And so what we've done is we found a tool called machine.ai that creates topic cluster content for you and everything. You plug in certain keywords and it'll generate posts for you. It's an interesting tool. I've used it a lot over the last 2 weeks, I would say. It's ridiculously helpful. And there's some small downsides to it, but the downsides don't come close to outweighing the pros to it. And so what we've been doing is thinking about the topic clusters we want on our site, and then we just have machined AI generate the content, and we've been putting it up. Not we don't put up each cluster right away. Some clusters I've put up, I've published. Other clusters are still in draft. And so I think this is the point everyone's been wondering about. Does it work? Do you get penalized? Does it work and whatnot? And it's still early days, but
Mhm.
the idea in general, there's a couple things you have to keep in mind with regards to Google and AI content and anything. One is it's going to be, I think it's going to be very niche dependent on what kind of content you're trying to create. So because ours, and what I mean by that, ours is very informational based, where it might know some things about blogging, so we can do some blogging, but we also have our own expertise that we can put in there and switch things up. But if you're in some kind of crafting thing and you might say, how do I create something around Cricut stuff? It might not be up to date with Cricut. There might not be enough content that it learned from to understand, okay, like I don't really know the ins and outs of how to do this thing in a Cricut or anything. And so you might
Mhm.
get very generic content that's just terrible and everything. And Google will be like, that's terrible content and everything. And so you have to keep in mind. I'm sure one day we will put together a list of what content works best for AI type of generation, what not. But what we've seen so far is when the content's good, that means we go through it, touch it up some. Sometimes it creates amazing blog posts. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, this is too formal, or we don't talk like this at all.
Mhm.
So we got to change things up. But stuff is starting to rank. Just pure AA stuff is starting to rank. It's starting to show up. And again, I think it's just because of how informational it is and the niche and that kind of stuff.
And it generates long posts.
Right.
Like when I've used it, it's like usually 2,500 to 4,000 words, which no matter what I tell ChatGPT, it will not give me that many words. It's always shorter than that. It's maybe 1,000 if I'm lucky. And that obviously helps. But then there are the cons to it where you do have to go back and make sure it's your philosophy. Like for us, it's not necessarily so much that things would be out of date. That might happen, but more it's like our philosophy on how we do things that we have to go back in and change.
And that's a lot of stuff that we have to go back. And if you're going, isn't it easier just to write something from scratch? If it was just a single blog post, I would say yes. But
Right.
if you're talking about like 10, 20, 30 blog posts, no. Like it's 100% not easier to do that.
Yeah. I
So like
agree.
machined, I was doing 30, it would do 30 blog posts in 2 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It was doing
So,
it.
and basically, just like for an overview of how it works, you give it the cluster that you want to work on, and you can make it more granular. But I think I want to say we did blogging. We just did. blogging as one, maybe. And you can ask for a cluster of 5, 10, or 30 posts. It does let you choose something like I can't think of the word that they use to describe it, a tone, basically. So it can be SEO friendly as the default. And then there's a couple other options like empathetic, friendly. There's a few others, but there's nothing, you can't really get super specific with the tone.
Right.
And there's a couple other choices that you make. And literally it doesn't just write the posts. It will write the post and interlink all of them.
Yes.
So you don't have to worry about linking anything together. It's already done. And you connect it to your WordPress site. So it will, after it's done writing and having everything linked, you can ask it to publish them to WordPress and they'll be right there in your drafts. You can publish them right away or start going through them and changing things. But it's literally 2 to 5 minutes and you have 30 posts that are done
Right.
and all linked together,
Right.
which is,
And
that's
so,
amazing.
right. So like the pros of it obviously are the speed, the interlinking, because if you're going to have a topic cluster, you want the posts to interlink with each other. You have two options. It can find the keywords for you. Like you just give it the topic and it'll find keywords for you, or you can insert your own keywords. I'll talk about that in a second because I've played around with both. And those are just huge positives that, again, she says it connects right to your WordPress. So you tell it to publish to your WordPress, and it'll go and save and draft, and then you can go through and do what you need to do. Downsides are because some of the posts are so long, there's a lot of content that starts to overlap depending on what you have. So I did 30. I'll just use digital. I'll use ebooks. Selling ebooks as an example here. So I was like, let me just do 30 posts on selling ebooks. There's not that's starting to get like really granular with the keywords on that thing and everything. And so what happens is because it's churning out 2,500 plus words, you're going to have a lot of posts where the information starts to overlap. It just becomes, okay, why you should sell ebooks, why ebooks are valuable and everything. And that just happens in every single post. That's not a bad thing necessarily. But it could also mean that some topics are just a bit more wordy than it needs to be for the person to get their answer across, right? Like somebody might be searching for something or like, why is this 4,000 words
Yeah.
and everything? And so you can decide not to publish that. You can decide to rewrite it. You can decide to just reorganize it and you'll be okay. Another thing is some of the keywords, there might be some keyword cannibalization. And basically what that is, if you have one page that's ranking for a certain keyword, and then you have another page that also includes that keyword just because it's just in there naturally, is it taking away the juice from the one that you're trying to rank for and everything? So that's just something you have to be mindful of. I'm sure that's going to happen with us. So basically the way I'm approaching it is if it writes 20 posts, 30 posts, we publish them all and then just start seeing what's happening and then make the adjustments afterwards and everything. Cause it just seems a lot easier just to let Google decide, okay, we're picking this one, this post for this
Right.
keyword and everything. And so we say, okay, let's take this other one down and move forward with that and everything.
The one thing you have to be like mindful of if you send everything to WordPress as a draft and then you decide not to publish some of them in WordPress, those other posts are going to be linking. Everything's probably going to link to something. So you do have to be careful of that.
Right.
But
I
you
learned that
can
the hard
make
way.
that decision ahead of time.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. Like I thought because there's like I mean, if you go through, there's a list and you check them all, like which ones. And so there was one topic where I was like, there was 20 out of 30 that I decided. Like I kept 10 out and I thought it wouldn't link those 10. It still links those 10 no matter what that I didn't send to WordPress. And so what you have to do, you have to actually delete from the list before you write them all together
Gotcha.
and everything. And I was like, oh, so now I have to go back through these posts and check the links to see, okay, like that post never existed and everything. But again, like hearing us say this, you might go, oh my God, that sounds miserable. Do it.
No,
This is so much easier
it's phenomenal.
to do than the other
And
way.
to see them starting to pop up on Search Console, like I think the one that I saw it's only a couple weeks old, maybe 3 or 4 weeks old tops.
Yeah.
And it's already not only popping up on Search Console, but it's gotten clicks.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
And on the other site that we're working on while we go through teaching our program and everything, Obsidian Tavern, posts are, a week old and they're starting to pop up and everything. And that's a brand new site and everything. But again, that's more because of the niche. Like world building itself is not heavy with deep content and all that kind of stuff and everything. And so that's always what you want to keep in mind, everyone. I'm not saying just jump on and be like, okay, I'm going to do credit cards and generate a ton of content for credit cards and now I'm going to rank. It's not like credit cards are like super competitive and
Yes.
everything. So you probably wouldn't stand a chance
Right.
with that and everything. You have to be mindful of this stuff. Another real quick point about, you'll see a lot of people on Twitter be like, oh, Google like slamming AI sites. And I've been doing my research and looking through that. There's a ton of people that do AI content, but they do very generic affiliate based content. So everything is just, they'll just create thousands of pages of just trash and everything and just say, well, if I get 10,000 pages indexed on Google, some of them are going to rank and somebody's going to end up clicking something eventually. That's obviously never going to be our approach. We want to make sure we provide the best experience and all that kind of stuff. And so it just makes sense. Like it just makes sense to have AI in some way in your life. You decide how much you want to use, let it be. But if you're not finding a way to integrate AI somehow in your business, you're going to fall behind. At
Without
some
a
point,
doubt.
at some point, you're just going
Yeah.
to fall behind. There's going to be someone who sees the value of it in your niche and you're going to go, okay, I'm going to use it and I'm going to just start killing it with it.
Yeah.
And everything.
Because and I think a lot of people that are like, I'm not using it are like thinking of it in one very singular way of my creativity is taken away because I'm not writing this content anymore. But there are so many things that it helps with that are not just simply writing content. There's so many other things that you can do with it.
Right.
And you can decide how much to allow it to do for you or how little for it to do for you, but it should be doing something for you without a doubt.
So like, for example, now that we're doing blogging, we're doing some Pinterest again. We're not the stuff we're doing is not us saying 100% do all these things. This is us getting back and experimenting and seeing what's happening. And you're writing pin descriptions with AI, or is it pin titles, or is it both? Or
Well,
yeah.
I have been doing, so I'm going to record a separate video on my Pinterest workflow at the moment, but I've been doing, so this morning, for instance, I did 30 pins for one blog post and I created the images with Midjourney. So that's AI. I created I created 30 different titles with the keyword using ChatGPT. I created 30 descriptions. Actually, I didn't do 30 descriptions this time, but I could have created 30 different descriptions with that keyword and other related keywords in them. Everything that needs to go into your pin with your keywords. I also, whenever I create a new board, I have AI write the description for the board. I had it write the description for the Pinterest account overall. So it's got all the keywords I want in there because descriptions are my least favorite thing in the world to write. And in fact, I shared one of the titles with you this morning and I was like, is this a good title? Because I definitely I'll see something like, ooh, that feels a little, I don't like to say salesy, but it feels salesy or copywriting-y.
Too clickbaity.
Exactly. So I feel really good about letting AI do it for me because I do give it my tone and everything to use, but I don't have that internal filter of I might tone it down a little bit too much on titles.
Right.
But I don't have that now because ChatGPT is doing it for me.
And the funny thing, you said that as I was walking my dogs and I was going through Pinterest and I was looking at the type of content people were creating and everything. And it was more about what titles and stuff they were using. And it was always those kind of titles where, like you said, I'd be like, that's not the titles I do and everything. But I could understand why people use them and they click on them. And I was like, oh, but if AI gave me that title, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense because AI did it. Like AI is the bad person. AI is the bad guy, right? The bad salesy person. I'm just the one that's just along for the ride.
Exactly. Yeah.
For it and everything.
That helps me a ton. It really does. It turns off that filter in my head, which is necessary sometimes.
Right. And that's just another great way to use AI. And that's what we mean in a sense of there's just tasks that it's very easy to get burnt out as a creator or a solopreneur when you're like, I have to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
You very well can do everything. I don't think you can do everything well over a long period of time. and do it well consistently. I just don't think it's
Kind of what
I
I do if I weren't using it is I would start cutting corners. I would use the same title every single time. I would use the same description every single time. This morning, I caught myself because I was like, I don't want to ask this thing for 30 different titles. And then I'm like, it's a robot. It
right.
doesn't care how many you ask for.
And it's like thinking back to when we were first doing blogging and selling a blogging course, and when I was doing keto stuff and making a lot of money, there's still a ton of things that I just was not doing well. Like, I was just not doing it well at all and everything.
It's a lot.
I got by with it because nothing was required. But that's why I'm saying nowadays, if we go up against someone who knows their stuff like we do, but they're also using AI, we would fall behind.
Mhm.
Like we wouldn't stand a chance and everything. It's totally different if we're like we're in a niche that nobody knows anything and we just happen to be professionals. Then we can say, oh yeah, we're fine and we're cruising until again that one person comes along and is I know a lot of this stuff and now I'm using AI to do things. And one of the reasons why that we're harping on AI so much is because pretty much the name of the game. And I've always hated this, and I've always tried to avoid it. I tried my best to find different ways around it, but essentially the name of the game is distribution. And that means how can you get in front of a lot of the right people and everything, right? So like my philosophy is you just have to get in front of the right people, which is still true. Not saying that's not true. It's still true because there's only certain people in your audience who will buy from you. But some people are just better at getting in front of a lot of those right people and everything, where some of the stuff that I used to do would just be like, no, this is high level stuff. I'm going to be very sophisticated. So I'm just going to get in front of 10 people today. And these 10 people are going to appreciate it. That makes me feel good inside. But when the other person's doing 500 people a day of that same kind of audience, and maybe their content's 90% as good as mine or 80%,
Mhm.
they're just going to make a lot more money than me. Like they're just going to obliterate me and everything. And so now it just comes down to how do we use AI to multiply ourselves? Like how do we make AI seem like we're just all over the place, and everything. And so that's what we're starting to work on now and everything. And
Yeah.
so far, I like the results and everything.
Yeah, I would definitely not be doing any type of pinning if it weren't for ChatGPT writing those titles and descriptions for me, and probably doing it better than I would have done it as
Right.
well.
And then another thing real quick, because I think we got about 3 more minutes. Obviously, like we have our offer 12-hour ebook method that teaches how to use AI to create a book. Now that when I started using AI more, it feels like mentally mindset wise, I'm more open to certain offer creation things. Cause I'm like, instead of having that roadblock of that sounds like a good idea, but it's gonna take me forever to do. Now it's oh shit, yeah, let's create that. Or let's
Yeah,
try to create that. Let's do that. Yeah, we can do that. We could do that. We could do that.
yeah,
And
it's
all that
absolutely the
stuff.
same. Yep,
So um
without a doubt. We were just talking about the opt-in book before we hopped on the call, which I wrote in a day, and it- and I talk about this with the 12-hour ebook too. In the introduction to the 12-hour ebook, how it used to take we used to teach 10 days to write an ebook, and now we teach 12 hours. But actually, I might not have ever written either of those books without AI because I would have had that feeling of this is going to take forever.
and some of you listening to this, you might not ever have that feeling. Maybe that's just how you are and everything. But with us, we know there's always so much like we know we always have a lot of things that we want to do and everything. And so looking at one single thing and be like, this thing is going to be the thing that takes us forever, takes us away from all the other stuff as
Mhm.
well, everything. And at the end of the day, the goal is always, again, to get to a place where the business is doing enough on its own where we can go and choose to do whatever we want and everything. And so there's different levels of distribution, and AI is just going to make that a million times easier for all that kind of stuff. So
I love it. And I've trained mine to talk like really nice to me.
there you go. There you go.
It's like my cheerleader.
We had a call the other day in one of our programs, and I was having this, it was before it started. I was having this one-on-one chat with someone, and they were just talking about like how just mentally just using AI just clears their mind with so many like tasks and everything. It's just like, okay, let me just, instead of me sitting here forever going, oh, how do let me just ask ChatGPT. It doesn't mean we're not saying AI is the answer for everything, but why not put something in AI, see what happens, and
Mm.
see what comes out of it? And she was like, "Yeah, I would do that." And now I'm like, "Oh, okay, let me move forward." I used it the other day. I was like, "Okay, I got to write this mega guide on something," and I know all the information because I'm going to write it. I'm not going to ask ChatGPT to write it, but ChatGPT, give me an outline. If you had to
Yep.
write this, what's the outline? And I looked down.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, I forgot I forgot about this point, so let me talk about this point. The rest I had, and like certain things, I was like, nah, I won't do that.
Right.
Like it might be like the history of this, and I'm like, I'm not including the
Yeah.
history of that in it.
It gives you that.
Yeah,
It's that first action that you can take that is so simple to take. There's no thinking, there's no planning, it's literally just asking a question. In fact, my mother, my 80-year-old mother yesterday was asking me something about AI. And she's, oh, I could never use that. I'm like, they literally just ask the question. That's it.
right, right, and it's just something once it becomes a habit, it's an amazing thing to do. So
It is.
if you're not using it, you're silly. That's all I'll
Mhm.
say. Like if you're
Really.
not using it, don't come to us a couple months later and be like, oh, my business is slow and yada yada yada, and I'll be like, okay,
On the AI.
yeah, nothing I can help you with. But to finish this off, you still need to find your own voice. You still need to find your own philosophy and worldview around your topic and all that kind of stuff. So you can mix that with AI and all that kind of stuff. It's very tempting to say, oh, I'm gonna let AI take care of everything, especially because you have a lot of people on social media saying that that's what they do. AI created this video for me and it did this and everything. Again, that works for certain niches, but over time, what's going to happen is more knowledgeable people around that topic is gonna come in, and they're gonna be like, "Okay, how can we do this the right way?" And
Mhm.
everything, and they're just gonna win out. So,
Yeah,
there we go.
agreed.
AI and content. And for those, Mary Beth didn't think we would be able to talk a whole podcast about this subject and everything, but I said it would be no problem.
There'll have to be a bunch of different little tutorials that will come along with this at some point
Yeah, so,
because we need the
alright, everyone.
visuals too.
Yeah. Alright, everyone. This is Paul,
And Mary Beth.
and we'll talk to you later. See ya.